Everyone from me, Brent Graham of goodforthegame.co.za. It's a Thursday night, 9:15. We're starting slightly later at the moment during Super Rugby than normal. And we're going to be talking Super Rugby week of hard action, of course. We've also got the Six Nations. The final week, it looks done and dusted for France now, but is it? Well, we'll chat about that. And, of course, the betting in just a couple of seconds. Right, let's introduce one of my two guests. We're just waiting for Nathan to come in. He often gets caught up in a bit of traffic and that in the morning, dropping his kid. But we've got the Admiral joining us now. Admiral, welcome back to the show, mate. And you're looking forward to the final weekend of Super Rugby.
Yeah, thanks a million, Brent. Thanks for being back on. Yeah, looking forward to this last weekend of Six Nations. Maybe not the best week for Ireland last week. That was a tough watch as an Ireland fan. But man, France deserved it. They were incredible. You'd think losing the Pont would have some effect. Probably being the best player in the world for me is anyway. And it didn't look like it affected them at all. The bench worked so well. They really, really overpowered us. Like I haven't seen an Ireland loss like that for a long time. Even great teams like the Box and the All Blacks haven't done that to us for a while. But hoping maybe, however unlikely it is, that Scotland and Italy can do a job this week. I think that's probably more patriotism than anything else.
I can assure you that it is more patriotism than anything else. And we'll have a look at the betting. I think Nathan has joined us down the bottom. Let me bring him in there. I'm on I don't know why my screen's not as big as normal. There, Mark, is Nathan's grand piano. So we'll wait for him to join us there. But yeah, it looks, that's why my bet that I suggested last week in the newsletter was take France to win the tournament at sort of 17-10 rather than to win the game at 11-10. Now, of course, it could have gone wrong. It could have been like a 4-2 win on points-wise for France, but I always figured that was unlikely. And, very much got matters in their own hands at the moment. And, we'll maybe just have a little log. We'll look at the log when we chat that. But let's start talking a little bit of Super Rugby. Before we do that, though, let's welcome the guys in the live chat. We've got Mark with us, Farid has joined us, Werner's joined us. And Admiral Mark reckons you're getting, where's this one? You're getting younger with every show. If only that was true, eh?
I've just come back from a college trip to Prague, so I don't feel younger than I did 2 weeks ago, whenever it was I was last on.
Excellent. Well, also JJ Bauer joining us and 2M Systems as well. Well, I had so many technical problems before the show. I didn't even get a chance to do the banner. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pull up, and I've no idea why my screen is looking totally different today to what it normally does. I don't know if I've maybe larger. Let me just see if I can bring it down now.
I think it's technical issues all around, Brent, because I've got mine as well. My camera's not working for some reason.
Oh, okay. Also looking different. But let's bring up the betting of the Super Rugby games, and I'm not going to put the banners up today, guys. But let's get started. We've got the Highlanders up against the Hurricanes tomorrow. Now, Admiral, this has been quite an interesting one. Hurricanes actually open slight favourites. I did cap the Highlanders as favourites for this game. So on that basis, in the Super Rugby blog, I sort of suggested having a go at the Highlanders on the board, which doesn't look a bad move now, just purely on the betting, because the Highlanders are the 5 to 6 favourites here, with the Hurricanes now sitting at 23-20. But at the same time, there's quite a lot of people who reckon the Hurricanes will win this. So it really does look like a typical close New Zealand derby.
Hey guys, just checking that you can hear me or not.
Yeah.
You can. Okay.
Oh, Nathan, we can hear you, yes.
Yeah, I've got technical issues. My camera's not working. I wasn't sure if the sound was working as well.
Oh, okay. No, Lekker, we can hear you. So in fact, Admiral, I'll come back to you on that one now. Let's bring Nathan in. The invisible man, we'll call him tonight. And Nathan, first of all, good to have you on the show.
I can't get the camera to work, but I'm going to have to log out and log back in, and that's going to take a few minutes. So maybe I'll do it a bit later.
Okay, yeah. So you go for it. We'll start chatting. We'll start chatting. You go out and come back in 100%. We'll still be talking about the first game, I'm pretty sure. And in fact, let's just have a look. Dan is actually joining us. Always nice to see someone. I don't know if a lot of guys do watch the show on Twitter. I don't know if they realize if they comment that it actually does come out on the show, just like YouTube as well. So great to have you on, Dan. Stefan here as well. JJ is coming in straight away. He's going unders at 58.5. Farid is all over Canes with a sizable multiple. I also know, I believe that Nathan is also going to be on the Canes. So yeah, he's going to be coming. He's going to be joining us in a second. And yeah, Admiral, let's get your views on this game. Did you take any early position? Are you leaning any way in particular in this one?
So I was like you. I had the Highlanders as maybe 3 or 4 point favorites, I think, to start. So I did take the early Highlanders on the money line. I think I had 2.1, I think, and then it was Tuesday. I think I heard that the Hurricanes would be getting a couple of players back. So Amua, the hooker, Lomax, was Matt Gallagher as well, and in the second row, and that sort of just tempered a little bit. So I ended up hedging out. So I have nothing on this game, and I think it's going to stay that way. If you had to push me, I would still say I fancy the Highlanders, because I mean the Hurricanes this year. Yeah, you can't look too far back into the past, and if you're looking at the Hurricanes this year, I think you'd have to say you'd fancy the Highlanders. But just those players coming back, especially Amu and Lomax, even if they're on the bench, do scare me enough to get me to hedge out of it. So I'm gonna go no bet on this game.
Yeah, it's that sort of game. Funny, I was looking at a bet. In fact, I'm not going to pull it up here on the Bet Exchange website, but they've got it. In fact, let me pull it up. They've normally got a bet either team to come within, to win by 7 points or less, or the draw. I just want to see if they got that, because this is the sort of game, Admiral, where I can. Here we go, winning 8+ margin. We've got the price there of 1.43. So this is net decimal, so it would be 2.43 as you talk about, Admiral. So I'm a bit of a fractions guy, fraction over the 14 to 10 mark. What do you think of that bet for like an interest where you're torn on the game? Because some of these, I mean, the New Zealand derbies can be back and forth and ultimately go down to the wire. I quite like this one at a shade over 14 to 10.
Just for me, I just think I like that, but I could see the Hurricanes sort of reverting to what they were last year and blowing them out, and I can see the Hurricanes sort of staying what they are, and the Highlanders, not doing a job on them, but winning comfortably enough for me to just say I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna watch it and see what these two teams are, see what the Hurricanes are now with their players back. So I think I'll be staying out of this altogether.
Right. Well, Will comes in. Evening, gents. Yeah, Stefan, just to let you know what that bet slip was. In fact, I can tell you if I log into Bet Exchange, I don't have the 4.44 in my account at the moment. I think I've made it well publicized. I'm pretty flat, other than PokerBet, where I got a few rand line there. But I was working out what, because I've got that buying money thread or tip and a tear or whatever I'm calling it on. Again, I was kind of working out what the price would be of 4 short price favorites. So yes, it was a 3 rand minimum bet, and that would have been the total returns of 4.44. So please you spotted that one there. I think Nathan is joining us, so let's bring him in and see if we can hear him. I can see him in the bottom there. Let's see if the camera's working. And if it's not too serious because we can hear him anyway. Nathan, can you hear us? Nathan, you there? So I'm going to mute him for the time being, and I will ask him to. We've got a little private message thing on the app here that he can message us there. But let's get into the second game then, Admiral. This is of course also tomorrow. It's Brumbies against the Fijian Drua. I think we've had quite a steady handicap on this one. A bit of early money for the Brumbies perhaps. We've had 12.5 and 13.5. We've got a points line here of 59.5 in Canberra. What are you doing in this game?
Yes, at the start of the year, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a Fijian Drua fan, but if I had to pick a team, Super Rugby, I think they're quite likable. They play good stuff. So I normally sort of have a soft spot for them, but I thought this was going to be a tough year. I thought they would take a little bit of a step back. I was thinking teams are getting a little bit used to playing in Fiji, and that is their strength really, because when they go away, they can be a bit ropey. But they've been, I think, of any team, they've sort of exceeded what I thought of them the most. They've been pretty good this year. I mean, we saw last week, beating. I mean, it wasn't a full Chiefs team, but it was a pretty good Chiefs team beating them in Lataka. So I mean, the Brumbies have been very good as well. Beat the Blues last week, and I mean, I don't know if you saw it, their defense, particularly at the breakdown, was brilliant. They gave the Blues no momentum every time. They'd have someone over the ball and they'd be pinching it back. But beating a team and beating maybe a superior team and really battering a weaker team, they're two different things. And so while the Brumbies, they might be able to sort of pull out these wins, I'm not fully sure they're able to sort of hammer bad teams, if you know what I mean. And the Drua have gotten a lot better away. They're not at the level yet where they can win games away from home. You know, they came up close against the Waratahs. They gave the Hurricanes a good go. But I think they can stay close in games now. And I think you said 13. There's a 14.5 up in Europe. I'm going to have a decent go at that. It's a full Drua team. They have no injuries on all of their squad at the moment, which is pretty impressive for week 5 of the tournament. The Brumbies are largely unchanged. They have Lola Siu back in at 10, who I'm not sure will make a huge difference because the guy they've had in at 10, Declan Meredith, he's been excellent. So 14 and plus 14.5 for me will be my play. It is the Drua way. This could end up with a 30-point Brumbies win, and I look like a bit of a fool. But Drua plus 14.5 will be one of my bigger plays this week, I think.
Right, interesting. Drua 14.5. Stefan's going Brumbies point. Sorry, Stefan says overs all day. Johanna's saying Brumbies points, and Fareed making the point there that the Drua have been clever in the way they've rotated their team. I guess, I'm kind of one of those guys waiting for the Drua to start showing signs of weakness. But so far, unfortunately for them, a few narrow losses up front, but they could be right there at the top of the table if they'd converted a couple of those into victories. Guys, I just want to take a minute and try and see what's happening here with Nathan. I've just opened my WhatsApp on my computer. Well, busy hanging. So let me see. I'm going to bring him in and just see if he is maybe there. I know the camera's not working. Nathan, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah,
no, the camera's just not happening for whatever reason. I don't know what's going on.
No problem. Mark can look at your grand piano there in the background. But Nathan, what we'll do is let's backtrack while we've got you on and go back to the Highlanders Hurricanes game. I did give everyone a suggestion that I thought the early Highlanders was the play, and I mean money wise it hasn't looked bad. But you, along with a lot of other punters, are now saying the Hurricanes are the value. So are you firmly in the Canes camp here?
Yeah, I am, and I think this is definitely the most interesting game, and not surprisingly, probably the most divisive game of the weekend. I mean, and I think I said to you on one of the chat groups that we're part of that it's absolutely the right move that you've made to take that early price, and then there's been that line move. So you've got a value bet in the pocket, no matter what happens, I think. And for me, it was kind of the same, but on the opposite side. So I took Hurricanes on the money line when it was around 220. And obviously that's changed now. So, in a funny way, like if this is a genuine coin toss, and I think, from talking to one of my mates, that's how he described it, then, in a way, if you've got plus money on a coin toss, that is a long-term winning position, no matter what, so that people get very fixated on outcomes. But, if you're talking about value, then that's what value is.
100% right, and you probably would have been backing to get into the show at the time the Admiral was talking about it, but he had the same view as me at the start. He liked the Highlanders, so he also took the price. And then when he started getting word of what the Canes team might look like and that, he traded out. So as you say, if you're constantly getting teams, and then the line moved in your favor, it gives you options, and in the long run, you may not win this game. You may even lose the next 3 games like that. But in the long run, you're going to make money.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the other thing that's interesting just about the Highlanders narrative, sort of going back to the Moana game, which I think is a game you won't remember particularly fondly, because I think from memory, I think you were on Highlanders points, and you were kind of
31 points in the first half. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were kind of bemoaning the fact that they couldn't score in the second half. But I think one of the things that was deceptive about that final score is that if you go back and look at the 10 minutes just before halftime, where the Highlanders scored 21 answered points, they were basically all against the run of play. If you actually go and look at it, so one was
an
a
intercept, I remember.
a 95-meter intercept where basically Moana were right on the line. I think the second one was a contested kick inside the Highlanders half, which just bounced kindly from a kind of a tap on where the guy fluffed the kick straight into a Highlanders hands who went sort of 50 meters to score. And I think the final one, there was some phase play in the lead up, but it had come from a toe through, or no, actually it might have been a box kick that just landed with no body from Moana sort of chasing back. So they all originated inside the Highlanders half. It was basically 21 points against the run of play, and then they never scored another point. So, from the point that it was 10-10, you could argue that they really didn't deserve or didn't score any further points. So I just think that was a very deceptive final score. And I think if the Highlanders had lost that game, which they could have anyway, because, Moana were very close to winning it, then yeah, exactly. I think the whole narrative around the Highlanders is very different if they come into this, at 1-2 with a loss to Moana. So, yeah, I'm not as high on the Highlanders, and I think even a win against the Blues, I think now hasn't aged as well. It's but it's not like the a win against the Blues is something that is a shining beacon of how good you are this season. So, yeah, I just think the Canes are starting to resemble the team that they had last year. They're kind of getting the band back together a little bit, especially with what you see on the bench there. So it could be that last 20 is when they kind of come over the top. And I'm not one to kind of question selections, because I think the coaches, they always see things we don't see. But I've been a big Jonah Nareki fan for a long time. Like, he used to be a bit of a talisman for the Highlanders and for the Otago, but he's just not the player that he was. And if you watch him playing in NPC, he is incredibly frustrating because he just goes for all these chip kicks, grubber kicks. He tries to do too much himself, and a lot of the time he's doing it when his team's hot on attack and just gifting the ball away to the opposition. So it'd be interesting to watch him, see if he's put some of these little kicks back in the kit bag, because it's not actually that helpful. So we'll see. Like I said, it's going to be a divisive game, but I had projected the Hurricanes to win by 2, and if I can get plus 1.5, which is what I've got, I'll take that all day.
Yeah, 100%. And in fact, look, I'm not. This is one of those situations, Admiral. I'm going to join you on this one in the sense that I think my recommendation would be to those, what I would do here is actually back the Canes probably on the board of the Canes plus, rather, to bring to make sure that the draw is covered as well. And the bet I like, Mossman, and I don't know if you were on the show. It's not the sort of bet you'd fly into with any great big stakes, but a nice bet if you're a little bit undecided now on this game that I am. I've gone either team to win by 7 points or less, including the draw. So as long as the team gets a losing bonus point, and that's at a shade over 1.4 to 1. What do you think of that play?
I think it makes sense, because in my mind I could see this game going under as well. I think a lot of the time, again, the narrative is it's under the roof, it's going to be high scoring, but I could see this one turning into a bit of a grind, and that probably lends itself to that same bet, the under 7 on both sides.
Well, I'll bring up JJ Bauer's comment before I bring you in for the next game. He said right up front, under 58.5. So very much in the same sort of camp as you there, Mossman. Let's move on to the next game. Also Friday morning, Brumbies up against the Fijian Drua. You've got a handicap here, minus 13.5 Brumbies on Bet Exchange. I imagine you can get a point or two either side as well. And a point sign of 59.5. Mossman, what are you doing here?
Yeah, I've taken some Brumbies at minus 11.5, and it's definitely not the biggest bet of the weekend, because I can 100% see why people would be on the Drua, but it's almost the Brumbies are just such a strange team, because they almost fly under the radar for a team that are that good, and they've just been good for a long time, and they just kind of get the job done. And I think, again, thinking about results and how they age over time, that win in Fiji in week 1 with a weakened Brumbies team, that's aged pretty well. That looks like a good result, like in hindsight. And I think with Lalesia back, they're an ultra settled team. They really haven't rotated much at all. And it's basically the same guys that they had last year to a large extent. So yeah, it's as I said, not a particularly strong fancy, but at 11.5, I thought the Brumbies were good there.
All right. Well, let's go up to the Admiral now for the next game. Crusaders against Western Force. So first of all, Admiral, have you got anything to add on the Brumbies Drua game? I can't remember exactly where we switched off, but I think you'd given your play there. But otherwise, let's move on to Crusaders Force, where there has been plenty of money for the Crusaders. Minus 20.5 here, opened on Monday in South Africa. May have been something even lower than that, I'm not sure, but 25.5 now. Admiral, your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I thought the Crusaders were amazing last week. They were really, really impressive. I mean, when I was sort of going through the teams this week, and what really stood out was that Crusaders bench, I think, looks excellent, but in particular that the Force bench, it's pretty weak. I mean, there's sort of 16 to 19, you may know some of them, they're pretty solid Super Rugby players, but then 20, 21, 22, 23, I mean, they have either under 100 minutes of Super Rugby, or the 22, who I will be honest, I have not heard of, has played as rugby in the 3rd division of Japan up until now. And then if you compare that to the Crusaders bench in the same positions, you've Blackadder, Mitch Drummond, James O'Connor, and Levi Amua, who are, I mean, really, really top players, especially Levi Amua. So I can see this going very similar to last week, and maybe with an even bigger scoreline. I think that they won by 24 or something last week. You can get 23 up in Europe. I'm not sure how that is in the Southern Hemisphere, but I'll be on minus 23 for this. I think they look like they're really clicking. Will Jordan looks frightening again. So minus 23 will be my call this week.
Right, I'm just chuckling because you see I was working out the short priced one at PokerBet as well there. Minus 23, I see. I'm just looking 25.5 at PokerBet as well in South Africa. Mossman, was some of that early money yours this week on the Crusaders minus?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was. So it was 19.5 here for a while, and I kind of took that early, and then sort of. And the reason for that was it's a bit of a quirk of the scheduling, but when I looked at the Force's schedule, and I don't quite understand how this works because, obviously with an odd number of teams, there's a bye week that everybody has. The Force don't have a bye week coming up, I believe, like for another 3 or 4 weeks. So they were really due for a bit of a rest spot, and this was the perfect spot, was the most logical spot for it, really. So, I was kind of anticipating that, one or maybe both of Nick White or Stephen Donaldson would it's not Stephen, is it? Anyway, we've got his name. But Ben, so I sort of anticipating that there'd be some resting, which was the reason for getting on early.
The guy scored the try for them to beat Pacifica. Hey?
Yeah. So
his name just escaped me for a second.
Yeah, so I mean, do have a look at the scheduling just to confirm that, but I'm pretty sure they don't have a bye, so it was always due for that. So that was kind of like an early indicator. And then obviously when the teams come out, both of those guys are rested. Carlo Tizzano as well. No Hamish Stewart. I mean, you could make an argument that those guys are kind of 4 of the 5 or 6 best players in that team. So it's a little bit of a white flag to me, and those sort of scenarios don't tend to go well in away games traditionally against the Crusaders. So I think I was pretty happy to kind of pile into the Crusaders at those early numbers, and it's not difficult to imagine as the Admiral said, a very similar scoreline to last week.
Yeah, 100%. I must say this is a game I really like that logic, what you did looking at the schedule and that, because, I mean, as you said, it did prove to be spot on, and probably quite a few punters did it because the line did move before the teams came out there as well. But, yeah, I saw a couple of people expressing also surprised that they've been rested, but when you mention their schedule, it certainly makes a lot of sense. So Crusaders, just to touch on Crusaders points, I see points over 44.5. Crusaders, I think, was probably a little bit lower of value because I know the total points line on this game, if I'm not mistaken, opened at around the 60.5 mark and it's moved up. So you probably could have got Crusaders a little bit lower there. But yeah, I'll maybe have a look at the points market on this one, but not going to get too involved, although I do fancy the Crusaders overs. Right, let's stick with you, Mossman, for the next game. Chiefs against the Blues, I must say, if you told me at the start of the season that we're going to see a double-digit handicap Chiefs favourite over the Blues, home or away, I would not have believed you. Not because I didn't think the Chiefs are that good, but yeah, I guess the Blues have been pretty disappointing. And this handicap has shifted quite a bit. And I guess my first question is, were you also on the early line here?
Yeah, I was. So I think on Wednesday it'll be Wednesday morning your time, but I generally I'll send you my projections and my plays, and I think at the time that I sent that to you that was -6.5, maybe it might have been
Yes.
7.5. Even to be honest, even though I was sort of projecting that, I was quite surprised how far this has gone. So at one point, this was -12.5 at Bet365, and to me, that was actually a step too far, and it has come back a point. So I would not be getting involved at the current number. As I said, I was more than happy to get involved at sort of 5.5, which it opened at TAB here, and then 6.5 once teams come out. I can see the reason for the move, but it's still big. Like this is. It's basically a first choice Chiefs backline from the past couple of years. I guess maybe at halfback, there's Ratama and Leroy Carter. If you swapped him out for then Isaturo, that's probably your first choice. But yeah, there's it's not the strongest forward pack that they've been able to put out. But some of the blue selections are slightly odd. Odd selections at 15. At 12, like getting the rookie in there, I guess they had to do it at some point. And he was good for Auckland in the NPC. But I think it's in the loose trio again. And I did bring this up last week where they look the most different, without Hoskins and Akira from last year. And I guess that just sort of that carries on. And I think the bench for both teams actually looks pretty good. So. Yeah, as I said, like the early number made sense, but 11.5 is a big number in a game like this.
Yeah, I must say I had exactly the same reaction to you when I saw. I wasn't paying too much attention this week, but I saw sort of 7.5, and I thought, okay, yeah, fair enough. And then I suddenly looked and saw 12.5, and I thought I thought a bookie had made an error actually, and I went and checked a couple others and saw it was 12.5. So pretty big now. So certainly the way the Blues have been playing can perhaps understand that. But Admiral, what are you going to do in this game?
I'm going to repeat a lot of what Nathan said there. I was, I think I'm on -6 as well, like -7. To be honest, I sort of regret. It was a pretty small bet. I sort of wish. I wish now that I'd been a little bit more confident, because, I mean, I was sort of mentioning it with the Hurricanes earlier on. This is week 5 now. Like we're well into this new season. You can't forget what happened last year, but I'm not sure how important it is anymore. I mean, I was looking at the team we played in, the Blues team we played in the final last year. I mean, the players they're missing, obviously, Bowden Barrett is no longer the 10. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like Harry Plummer. I don't think he's as bad as people make him out to be, but he's certainly a step down from Bowden Barrett. Hoskins, obviously, Sam Darry, who's a really, really solid lock. Ricky Telly as well, the hooker. They've lost to Kara Ioane, and even they're not. There's been maybe Nathan can tell me if it's rotation or people being dropped. But Finley Christie on the bench, I thought was a little bit weird. Perfete obviously is coming back from injury. I understand that, and AJ Lamb, who's been really, really good for them this year, also on the bench.
You're right. It is weird, especially the AJ Lamb one, because I think he'd really consolidated himself as a first team player. He's a standout. You could argue that he's probably more important in that midfield than Rico is, the way Rico's been going, to be honest. Finlay Christie's quite a divisive player. A lot of people really don't like him. And it's the same for Plummer. A lot of people don't like him, but to be fair, Plummer was there when they won the title last year, and Bowden Barrett wasn't. So Maybe it's just horses for courses. Blues play a certain style, and that style is better suited to Plummer. I don't know.
Yeah. Would I be right in saying is it the inside centre? Is this a Super Rugby debut? Because I'm not sure I've seen his name before.
Yeah, correct. Unless he got a couple of minutes somewhere, but no, I'm pretty sure because he debuted in the NPC for Auckland, last year, and that was on the back of like a standout under-20s campaign. So I think this would be his debut.
Yeah, it seems like an odd game to throw a young fella in, and even the fullback you mentioned, he's only played I think 3 games or 4 games at fullback. Not many is the answer. So I think even at -10, I think you can probably still get a -10. I would still be interested in that, but I'm happy to sit on my early minus. I think the Chiefs could really do a number on them here.
I've just having a bit of a laugh while listening to you guys talk about Harry Plummer. I see 2M System says Plummer is not as bad as you think, he's worse. And it's funny, how certain players just divide. Well, not necessarily divide people. I'd say maybe Plummer is divided 90-10. And I've actually watched him this season and even last season like that. He's really not that bad. But he probably did 1 or 2 things early in his career that have just sat with people. And I mean, I must admit, I've often been on the anti-Plummer bandwagon. But like Nathan said, he won the title. He reminds me a little bit of Stephen Donald for New Zealand a few years ago. I was never a Donald fan, but at the end of the day, who kicked ultimately the winning points to win the 2011 Rugby World Cup?
That's right.
Donald.
Yeah.
What do you think of him as an analyst?
I think he's great. Like, I think he's really honest, very insightful. Yeah, he's good, and he's very self-deprecating. Like, I think he's kind of aware that has, I guess, had that kind of negative association at the past, but at the same time, he's a bit of a cult figure. So, and it's funny because as we were talking about this, he was the player that it popped into my head in terms that some players just become a bit of a whipping boy for every single problem that a team has, and I think he was one of them. And I wonder if Plummer is a little bit the same. Like I said it earlier today, and I said it last week as well. But we don't see what the coaches see. They're not idiots, right? Like they put players in these positions because they know things that we don't know, right? And Plummer was there. He won the title. I sometimes feel that like Stephen Donald was his crime was not being Dan Carter. And there's not many Dan Carters around, so like let's just give the guy a break.
No, fair enough. I think you're right there. Alex is joining us on the show, and he's a Chiefs punter this week. He says the problem Plummer's got basically, he doesn't quite, he was fine behind a winning forward pack, but when the pack isn't doing as well, not as good a play. And I mean, you're spot on, Alex, in that sense. I mean, in South Africa, we've had a lot of players like that as well. Elton Yankee's been a case in point, a great player on the front foot, could really set the back line up. But the moment the pack were under pressure, he just wasn't the same sort of player, the sort of player you could rely on under that pressure. So anyway, this should be a cracking game. Certainly there are some excellent New Zealand derbies to look forward to this week. Alex coming in again, and Tupaia and ALB will card through that Blues midfield, and Shooter will take the space left behind. Perifota on the bench for Blues is some hope for them, says 2M Systems. Right, well, that brings us to the end of that game. Admiral, you're going to kick us off with the final game of Super Rugby. It's the Reds up against the Waratahs. This game in South Africa, the first line I saw was Reds -2.5. I'd capped it slightly higher than that at 4.5, so I wasn't too surprised to see the movement. But it's gone shooting past my line, and we're looking at -6.5 at the moment. Points 58.5.
Yeah, I had it. I think I had it -6 here. I missed the 2. I took an early 3.5. And I'm happy to sit on that now. I think if I were to still have a bet on this game, I would this time look to the points at an under 58.5. Because when I was surprised enough to see it this high. The weather is good, but I think some of it might be the Reds games have been relatively high scoring so far. I think they're averaging 60-something points a game. But when you're looking at total points, I think you have to sort of filter out some games. So I think you sort of have to disregard the Reds Moana game. I don't know if you remember it. I think it was getting close to 100 points. But I think when you're looking at total points, you sort of have to look at games that are relevant even to this game. So games that you can expect to sort of play out similarly. So I'm looking at sort of games of, in this game you have Reds, Waratahs, two teams of sort of similar standards. And if you look at those games that these two teams have played, so Force against Reds, the Waratahs at home to the Highlanders, Waratahs against Drua, and Waratahs against the Force. Those games have all been a little bit sort of lower scoring. They get a little bit scrappy. These teams have maybe lower quality than the New Zealand teams. They can tend to get a lot of handling errors, a lot of sort of cancelling each other out. So if you have the early minus or the early Reds minus, I think that's a pretty good bet. But if you have nothing up until now, I think the unders is the play. Because I think the Waratahs missing a few players as well. They've got Lanky Gleeson on the bench, who's been sort of their biggest, alongside Langus Bell, their biggest ball carrier. I think they'll miss him in attack. They've not got Darby Lancaster, the winger, and Jake Gordon as well. I'm not sure if he injured or is he being rotated, but he's not in the 23 at all for this game. So I think the Waratahs will be a little bit blunter in attack. So I can see a Reds covering in a lower scoring game.
Reds 1-12, says Johan Esthuizen. Yeah, interesting points line at 58.5. I mean, I think I also mentioned it on last week's show. I mean, there was a time when Aussie derbies would be priced at about 45.5. And certainly, aside from all the rule changes we got this year, over the last few years, they have been more entertaining. But I'm definitely leaning towards the unders there as well, Admiral, on that one. Right, let's have Mossman bring us home for Super Rugby Week 5. Mossman, what you got there?
I'm just not impressed by the Waratahs, and I think this is where, as bettors, you need to be able to look beyond the points table and see, like a 3-0 Waratahs team that was pretty unimpressive through the first couple of weeks, didn't cover. I was on the Force last week, so I was watching that game pretty closely, and obviously, if you looked at the scoreline, it was a bit of a blowout. But again, it was happened very late. I think Force were kind of chasing the game. I think they gave up a little bit towards the end, so I think it was kind of an inflated scoreline that didn't really give you any true indication about how good the Waratahs are. And I'm still pretty dubious about how good they actually are. And the Reds they're a good team. They're missing a couple of backline players, and I'm not really convinced by Murray at fullback. I'm not sure why they're persisting with that, but I think they'll do enough. And as I said, probably I think I was on the early number as well. But even at 6.5, I think I would be a Reds minus punter.
Right. Confidence. I must say, looking at the team sheets, I also found myself thinking maybe 6.5 points isn't going to be enough. So a bit of confidence there on the Reds. We'll come back and wrap up the Super Rugby best bet. But let's move into the Six Nations segment of the show. I'm on Bet Exchanger. I'm just going to pull up their handicaps. And I do have we obviously do individual previews for this on Good for the Game. I've got teams. We've got the teams up on Good for the Game as well. Well, Mossman, let's get you started on the Six Nations. Obviously, we've got a situation here now where this whole tournament, and we knew it would potentially either be settled last week by Ireland or turn on its head, and France would be going in as massive 1-10 favourites to win the title. That's exactly what's happened. And first game here for Ireland, big favourites, 20.5 points. And Italy, of course, coming off, I think last week, maybe they were flattered by the scoreline in the end with a few late tries, but they're essentially coming off two big hidings. What can we expect in this opener?
This is right where I projected this number, so it's not one that I'd be getting involved in. I mean, the good thing about Six Nations is that the lineups are pretty predictable. Not too much really changes, and that means the lines are pretty static through the week. So, not much has changed. This is a game I would stay away from. I could make a case for either side. Is this Ireland? They haven't rotated at all. There might have been, a temptation to give somebody a go, but they haven't done that. And then on the Italy side, you could argue, a kind of a bit of a bounce back spot for them being back at home after, taking a couple of beatings. So Ireland are not a team that tends to blow people out, it's kind of not necessarily part of their style. So that would keep me off the kind of the minus. And then Italy, but been pretty inconsistent, I guess, in terms of, keeping it together especially for 80 minutes. So, as I said, I projected it right around this number, sort of 21, and I would stay out of it.
Right, 100%. If you're projecting it on the handicap, better to start of it. Blake says, angry Ireland going to bully the Italians. And the question is, Admiral, are you more angry or sad? And Ireland more angry or sad this weekend? I mean, I think Nathan touched on a lot of things there, and one of them, for me is obviously the fact that Ireland have selected a strong side shows the intent to sort of, put this one to bed. But deep down somewhere, are they just carrying some disappointment into this game? Could that impact them? Can you find any value on the handicap?
Yeah, they might be angry. I'm not sure it's going to do them any good. They should be angry because they were pretty poor last week. I would say the one sort of interesting sort of selection maybe in the whole Six Nations this week is the Irish 10 jersey. It's become a pretty big national debate at home about who should be playing 10. They've had Sam Prendergast in, who's the very, very young Leinster out half. And that's been at the expense of Jack Crowley, the Munster out half, who was the out half when we won this tournament last year. And as you can imagine, anytime a Leinster player takes a Munster player's jersey, it can turn into a little bit of debate here. And so I think the thing is, I don't think anyone would disagree that Jack Crowley is probably the better player. But I think Sam Prendergast has sort of an incredibly high ceiling, which we haven't seen yet. But he's only 22, and I mean, in Ireland, players don't really debut for the national team before 24. Even Johnny Sexton made his debut at 24. So he is, he's learning a lot. But it was probably to the detriment of the team. You might have seen last week he didn't have his best day. So I do think we'll be a little bit better in attack this week. And with all that being said, I'm going to take the Ireland unders. I couldn't believe how high some of these totals were. I mean, it looks like Super Rugby. It's 63, 58, and 64, I think. And there is a little bit of rain in Rome projected. And so it's leaving our team totals at 43. I mean, Nathan was saying we don't really blow teams out, and that's exactly right. I mean, the last time Ireland scored 43 in a Six Nations game was 2022, and the last time they scored more than 43 in away games was 2021. I mean, the Italians, they haven't had their best tournament defensively, but I find it hard to see Ireland scoring 43 in a Six Nations game. We haven't performed well enough in the last 6 to 9 months to sort of justify any points line in the 40s, especially with a bit of bad weather. So Ireland under 43 will be my bet there for this one.
Right, Ireland under 43 and a half there. Right, Admiral, let's stick with you. Wales up against England. Wales amazingly can avoid the wooden spoon even if they lose all their matches, because they've been picking up bonus points along the way. They're 1 point behind Italy. They've got a better points difference. And in theory, they could get 1 bonus point out of this game and could finish ahead of the Italians if the Italians don't get a bonus point out of the Irish game. But anyway, enough on that for the time being. We've got a handicap that I think is edged towards Wales. Yeah, there was 11.5 early in the week when I looked in SA, it's sort of 10.5. So these Six Nations handicaps seldom move a lot. We've got 10.5, and we've got a points line here of 58.5. And Admiral, I'm thinking of your comments in the last game, and I was actually, when I looked at these 3 Six Nations points lines, I was also like, wow, these are high. Having said that, I can recall a few Six Nations final weeks where the points have flowed, when there's, let's call it nothing on the game. But this game for me doesn't have nothing on, because yes, we expect Ireland to beat Italy convincingly, but England will know a bonus point win here will guarantee them second on the log. And I think, well, that's not what you start the season looking for. I think England will take something from that, but Wales desperately need a win. So I think we're going to get a bit of trench warfare here. I'm thinking unders and potentially Wales. Where are you going?
In general, when I'm looking at games, I tend not to look at sort of historical head-to-heads too much. I think the exception. There's a little bit of exception in Six Nations. I think history is quite important, because a lot of the time we go into these games thinking Wales are very bad at the moment. I think they're going to get destroyed. People are going to score 50 and 60 against them. It just, even no matter how bad they are, Wales they do not get hammered at home very often in the Six Nations. And I mean, you were talking about Wales not finishing last. I don't think they won't care too much about that. They will be desperate to beat England. They don't like them at all. that does play a role in this. I'd say this game probably means more to the Welsh than the English. The English will, of course, say that they can win this tournament. I don't think France are going to slip up, to be honest. So you're saying there's a plus 10. I think there's a plus 11 around it up here. I think that's a good bet. What I would say is I think it might even be worth waiting 15, 20 minutes into the game. England could get, and they have been known to sort of get off to fast starts. But Wales will dig into this game. Like if you can get maybe a plus 17, a plus 18 early on in the game, I think that's a very good bet. And one of them, sorry, lights gone off in here.
Wales.
But what was it? The other thing I would say is I would wait until after the Ireland game, just in case that does change anything. Maybe that if Ireland get, say, the 4 try bonus point and score a lot of points, I think that does affect it a little bit. That England will then themselves have to go and get 4 tries. So I think on the off chance that, say, Ireland lose or don't get 4 tries, then I think Wales would be an even better bet, because England, all they can really do then is just win the match. It doesn't really matter by how much they win. So I will wait until after the Ireland game, but I think my bet will most likely be Wales plus or the total unders.
I see Blake is actually saying Wales for the upset. He also likes the plus there. Johan says Wales on the handicap. Will take another bite of it at halftime as well. Pretty much agree with what you said there. You did mention history. I won't go through all of it, but having a look here, only one high-scoring game. This is Wales at home over the last few years. There were 64 points. But if you look around there, wow, this fixture seldom reaches 40. So, yeah, you can't pay too much attention to the history, but there's plenty of needle when these sides play, and that can often lead to a tighter, more, what would you say, a low-scoring game. Let's quickly pull up the selections there and then bring in Nathan on this one. Nathan, is this a game where you getting involved?
Possibly, but what I was hoping, because a lot of the sentiment is for Wales, and what I was hoping that that could drive the price down to maybe single digits, 9.5. That then I would be looking at England, because as I said, there's a lot of sentiment for Wales, and I think there has been a bit of a dead cat bounce around the coaching change. But the reality is that I think that only lasts for so long, and the truth is that they haven't had the cattle, and that is their biggest problem. And that is that's not something that's going to change, in the space of a couple of weeks. So, once that kind of coaching change bounce kind of wears off, where are they really? And so, that's why it kind of led me towards England. The thing that puts me off slightly about England, it's a very experimental looking backline, and I don't necessarily like the look of that. Tommy Freeman, and correct me if I'm wrong, he's generally a winger, so I don't know how much time he spent at 13, but it just looks like what are they just trying to shoehorn as many Northampton players in there as they can. I'm just not sure of the theory behind that, where that's come from. We've obviously got Roebuck who's on debut, so it's just a slightly weird looking team. You've got Daly on the wing then, and Marcus Smith at fullback. So I don't like the look of that. The foot pack looks solid, no problem there. But yeah, just that back line and the thinking behind it. And I don't know if this is some sort of planning for the future in some way, but my experience, especially as an All Black supporter, is these kind of experimental putting somebody random at 13 very rarely works out. And so that is kind of at the back of my mind and would potentially keep me off this.
Right, 100%. Yeah, I think we're all kind of talking along similar lines there, as far as probably this being maybe a tightish game on the points line. Nathan, one thing that handicap, just to shift in a little bit more before taking the English, I'm a bit nervous. I'm a bit nervous on this handicap, full stop. I am leaning, though, towards the Welsh. Nathan, we'll stay with you for the last game. France up against Scotland. France will know exactly what they have to do. They also know going into this game that no matter what happens between Italy and England, really, they just need a victory here. I mean, in theory, England could go ahead of them in points difference if they put 80 yards past Wales, but we know that's not going to happen. So France really need the victory here. And we've got a line of 16.5. I think this has been stable all week. And a points line here of 63.5. I did see 64.5 at PokerBet. So, yeah, interesting one, this, Nathan. What do you have for us here?
I do think that waiting and seeing what happens in the previous game, and as Admiral suggested, is another smart thing to do on this one. And depending on how things pan out, I would be looking towards Scotland here. I think they're a bit of an underrated team, and they take a little bit of a kicking for being underachievers. I'm not necessarily sure that that's true. Like even in this tournament, they're probably one misconversion away from having a very different storyline about them from that England game, which I think they were the better team in that game. So I like Scotland. As I said, I think it depends on what happens. What's riding on the outcome of this game. But 16.5 in a game without Dupont, and I do understand that Dupont was out for the second half when they put all those points on Ireland. But it was kind of a strange second half to that game. What was it, 8-6 at halftime, and then just kind of everything went nuts, and it did feel a little bit like every kind of bounce of the ball came off for France. BRE is a bit of a freak, and some of the things that he did there. My favorite play of that game, actually, I don't know if you guys remember it, but the cross kick from out of defence on their own line that fell to somebody it was absolutely outrageous. Like you can look like an absolute fool if you get that wrong, but it was just one of those days where I felt like everything kind of ran for them. So, and at that point, Ireland were kind of playing catch up, and again, not something that I think suits them particularly well. And, that probably contributed to that blowout score. So, all that said, I'm not convinced that France are necessarily as good as they currently appear. And I think Scotland are slightly underrated. And, all of that would kind of lead me to look towards Scotland.
Right, leaning towards Scotland or the cap. I think Shane's comment leads me in towards bringing the Admiral in quite nice. He says total opening lines of the heights we've seen set for a while. Shane, 100%. Shane, of course, is also from Ireland, so we'll go to his countryman and get some opinion on that. And let me tell you, Admiral, that this is the line that I've been looking at. And I'm not talking about the handicap. I'm talking about the points line. Because for me, 63.5 is high for this fixture. Obviously, if it turns into an open running, France can run right. But at the end of the day, I'm expecting France to really have an approach of let's make sure we don't lose this game. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Louis Barbieri was talking about that kick, and he said if he kicked it to where he meant to kick it, he thinks Ireland would have scored. By his own admission, it was a bit of a miss hit into a bit of genius. So this game, it's funny. I think if the two other games play out as we expect them to, I think Scotland fans might be up for France here, because a France loss probably means an English championship. And if you know how things work up here, we in general prefer as long as England don't win, it's okay. But I think sort of going back to earlier to what I said, it's very rarely you get sort of blowouts in Six Nations games. Obviously, we've seen a couple in the last few weeks, but Scotland are. Nathan was sort of mentioning them. Scotland are a team that get kicked a lot, and I'm one of the people who kicked them. I think they're. I think they can. I think they're pretty untrustworthy if you want to win a game, but they're still a solid team, and I think the thinking here is that France are just going to turn up, throw the ball around again, and score 60 points. It's not really how the Six Nations works in general. The Stade de France, it's a nighttime game there. The place is going to be hopping. I think they'll have been spending the day in the bar watching the other two games, and it's going to be pretty loud. So there's sort of be this. I think there'll be an expectation for France to turn up and win by 40. I'm not sure. I just don't think I see it happening. And so I think tentatively I'd be on the Scottish plus here. Again, it could go horribly wrong, and we could see France play like they have the previous two games, and it'll be a rout. But I think these games where there's sort of just this expectation that France are going to turn up and hammer teams, it doesn't tend to come through more often than not. So I think Scotland can stay competitive in this game. And I'll be, is it 16? Yeah, I'll be on the plus 16.5.
Right, plus 16.5 on the Scots there. Yeah, it reminds me of what Nathan said last week, and it's so true. teams want to do this and want to do that, or you think, it doesn't always turn out that way at the end of the day. And France, not necessarily going to run away with this game. Personally, I'm leaning unders points here. I just think, and yes, I wouldn't go too far back in the history, but I don't think these sides have ever played a 64-pointer in France. I'll just have a look here quickly. There's been a couple that have gone over the 50 points all the way up to 60. I just think there's a bit of value here in the points line at 63.5, personally. So, that will probably be one to go into the newsletter. And if you're not on the newsletter, you can get that link down below in the description box. Let's get a couple more comments, and then we will cover our best bets.
So if I could just add one more thing to that, just in that game, that if it does turn into sort of a 7-style match, I think Scotland are better suited than any of the other Six Nations team to match France in that. I mean, you've got Finn Russell, who I'm not his biggest fan, but man, like if it turns into sort of loose rugby, there's very few better. And then you have Hugh Jones, Darcy Graham, Blair Kinghorn, and Duan van der Merwe, who are 4 of the most dangerous open field runners about. So even if it's a tight game, if it's an open game, I still think Scotland will be close.
And this kind of idea that teams that need to do certain things can just go and do them, like as if there's no opposition, like in their way. Like I know we've sort of touched on it, but it just very really works out that way. Look, what you find, and this is just from years of watching, and it's across all sports, is that when you need points for whatever reason, and you're really pushing, the game becomes really unstructured, and you start, falling into patterns of play that aren't part of your normal game plan, and things get messy. And there's generally, like in drum rugby circles, like knock-ons and all kinds of mistakes, because everybody just gets into this kind of a bit of a frenzy, and it just doesn't pan out.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I've also seen situations, following on from that, where teams need a bonus point win. And the other team knows that, and they're happy just to concede penalties, knowing that they won't take the 3 points early, and it changes the whole pattern of the game. The other thing, and just like last week, I know there were a few Irish players playing their last game and that. And I remember over the years, many a time, guys playing his 100th cap or he's playing his last game, and everyone says the team will do it for him and that. The other team are not there to allow that. And it's amazing how many times I remember the Sharks. I think it was Henry Honeyball, Stefan, or is it Andre Joubert? Stefan Joubert is watching the show. It wasn't him. But they were also playing their last game, and everyone was saying, the Sharks will do it for them. And I suppose the Sharks are a bad example. They get hammered by anyone anyway. But yeah, you never know how things are going to turn out there. That's for sure. Just having a look at Johan saying unders could come in, and Shane is saying trading strategy back under 63.5 and then take the over. And yeah, we have seen some of these games open up. 20 minutes, they've been pretty tight, and then they've opened up quite a lot. Gents, that brings us to the end of what's been a marathon, but a very enjoyable show, I must say. I thoroughly enjoyed chatting rugger with you, gents. Let's move into the best bets. Maybe if I can ask give us your sort of strongest fancies, and we'll start with you, the Admiral, on the Six Nations and the Super Rugby.
Yeah, for me, the best in the Six Nations this weekend would be the Irish unders. 43 is really, really high for a team like Ireland. And then for the Super Rugby, it feels weird to say it, but I think I'd actually the Drua 14.5 plus I think is quite big. At the start of the season, I didn't think I'd be saying that for Drua away from home, but here we are. I think they've been pretty good this year. And then just if I do, I could add quickly it's the last weekend of the under 26 nations as well this weekend, which I've been following quite closely. So the fixtures are the same: Ireland, Italy, England, Wales, France, Scotland. France and Scotland France are like the men's team, really, really good with the ball. And the point lines aren't out yet, but if you can get anything in the low 40s, even the high 30s, I think that's a take. They're gonna run the Scots ragged, I think. And then maybe a smaller play would be England minus 20 against Wales, but that would only be maybe a unit. To summarize, it's France under 20s around 40 if you can get that, and then in the men's Ireland under 43 and Fijian Drua on plus 14.5.
Right, excellent. That's the Admirals' best plays of the weekend. Johanna Esthuizen's weekly treble. Canes win. Wales, England under 60.5. Crusaders first half -7.5. That works out at 6-1 at World Sports Betting. Right, now we're going to go get Nathan's bet. I just want to have a look here. Shane says Rome looks like wet conditions. And we'll bring up a couple of the other comments while Nathan is speaking. But I got to say, Nathan, not having you on camera, I've been watching the analytics. Our female viewership has dropped off by 75% with not having your face in there. So please get that camera working for us.
Okay, I was going to say, but music lovers, they're very happy with the piano. They get a good view of it.
The piano.
Yeah. So,
what have you got?
So Hurricanes either +1.5 or on the money line. So I like these kind of situations where your betting interest and the team's interest are aligned in this sense. Like teams don't care if they win by 14 or 15. So sometimes those bets they kind of feel dicey. But with this one, based on what's out there in terms of value, like I like the Hurricanes, and if you can get a team that I think should be favoured on a plus, that's always a good thing. I think in terms of because there's been such big line movement on these, although I projected that Crusaders game to be right around the current number of 25 and a half, I sometimes think that you can't capture all of the, I guess there's an intrinsic kind of message there that maybe the Force have not come to play in this game, by their team selections. So, it's not difficult to see this one turning into a blowout. So I think that would be the other place that I would look. And then in the Six Nations, it is dependent on prior results, but I do like the look of Scotland on the plus.
Right, excellent. Yeah, having a look at those results, I think that Crusaders overs points is definitely going to sneak its way into the newsletter accumulator. Well, anyway, thanks a lot, guys. Great participation as usual from the boys in the live chat. Quite a few of you coming in from Ireland as well, and that's great to see. Thanks very much. And to my two guests, first of all, to the Admiral, great to have you back on. Hope you got a good weekend of watching sport. You don't have too many varsity projects to do this weekend?
Say again, sorry, I missed that.
I say you don't have too many varsity projects to do this weekend?
No, it's I'm on my break at the moment from college, so it's pretty much just rugby this weekend.
Beautiful, just rugby. And Nathan, yourself, what have you got planned for the rest of Friday? You got a bit of work, or can you relax while you wait for the rugby to start?
Well, it depends who's listening, right? If my boss is listening, then yes, absolutely. Day of hard work, but if not, then it might be sort of easing into the weekend here. So it's still pretty summery. So there's chances there's probably an afternoon trip to the beach actually.
You prompted me. I've got to tell one quick tale from back in the 2010 when we hosted the Soccer World Cup. I worked for a company which I worked for 25 years, but it was a full-time job. I was on the road quite a bit, so I could get away with going to watch my son play rugby and stuff. And I was called up by one of the financial channels, one of the TV channels, called me for an interview, and it was at like 12 o'clock in the day. And I felt I had to do this interview, but at the same time, no one knew that I had like a website with sports betting and all of that sort of stuff. And I'll never forget, I was absolutely sweating bullets about who would see me. But as it happened, no one did, so it all ended up okay. But anyway, guys, thanks very much. Really enjoyed the show. Thanks to all of you who watched on YouTube. Facebook, we don't get many viewers, but we got quite a few on Twitter tonight, not through the comments, but just having a look at the stats flashing up. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next week for the Handicap Rugby Chat That Matters.